What if the NHL's biggest what if actually happened? What if Sidney Crosby was never drafted by the Pittsburgh Penguins? In 2005, the NHL held its now famous Crosby Lottery after a lockout wiped out the entire 2004-05 season. Every team had a shot, some better than others, but one ping pong ball changed the league forever. Pittsburgh won the lottery, they got Crosby, and the Penguins built a dynasty around him. But what if they didn't? Let's rewind the timeline and explore how the NHL would have changed if Crosby had landed somewhere else. The 2005 NHL Draft Lottery was wild. To make things fair, every team that hadn't made the playoffs in the last 3 years got 3 balls. Teams that had made it once got 2, and the rest, just 1. Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Columbus, and the Rangers all had the best odds. Anaheim, New Jersey, and San Jose were long shots. But only one team could win. If Pittsburgh hadn't, the next 3 in line were Anaheim Ducks, Carolina Hurricanes, Columbus Blue Jackets. Let's imagine each of these 3 worlds. The Ducks were already a solid team with stars like Scott Niedermayer, Timo Solani, and J.S. Jaguar. If Anaheim had landed Crosby, he'd have centered a young core that included Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry, plus that elite defensive unit. Suddenly, the 2007 Stanley Cup run, even more dominant, and a dynasty for years to come. Crosby feeding Solani on the power play, Crosby taking over in the playoffs. That team might have won multiple cups, not just one. By 2010, Crosby's prime would have overlapped with a still stacked Ducks roster. We might have been talking about a West Coast dynasty instead of one in Pittsburgh. And in this world, Getzlaf probably never becomes the guy in Anaheim, Solani gets more help, and Crosby becomes California's biggest hockey star. Now picture this. Sidney Crosby joins the Carolina Hurricanes. They won the Cup in 2006 with Eric Stahl and Cam Ward. Add rookie Crosby to that mix? Forget surprise run. Carolina could have built a mini dynasty of their own. Stahl and Crosby as a 1-2 punch down the middle. That's nightmare fuel for the rest of the East. Very reminiscent of the 1-2 punch Pittsburgh had with Crosby and Eric's brother Jordan Stahl. Instead of barely scraping into the playoffs over the next decade, Carolina becomes a perennial contender. By 2009, when Pittsburgh wins the Cup in our timeline, Carolina might have been the team to beat. The Canes would have had their own superstar core, homegrown, young, and terrifying in transition. With Crosby's star power, Carolina becomes a bigger hockey market. More fans, more attention, maybe even changes how we think about Southern hockey altogether. Would they still bring in Rod Brind'Amour as coach later? Probably. But the whole culture of that franchise changes with Sid wearing red. Let's talk about Columbus now. The Blue Jackets were a mess in 2005. No playoff appearances, no identity, no face of the franchise. Enter Sidney Crosby. Instead of wasting Rick Nash's prime years, the Jackets finally build something. Crosby and Nash could have become one of the most dangerous duos in the NHL. With Sid in the lineup, Columbus might have made the playoffs much earlier, and more often. The city would rally behind him. The franchise gains credibility. And maybe, just maybe, they avoid a decade of being stuck in mediocrity. But here's the flip side. Do they develop Crosby properly? Would Columbus's coaching carousel stunt his growth? It's not guaranteed success, but even a 70% version of Crosby makes that team relevant overnight. And Nash? Maybe he never leaves. Maybe he retires as a Blue Jacket after a couple playoff runs with Sid at his side. Now let's talk about chaos. Imagine Crosby in New York. The Rangers were desperate for a new face of the franchise after the Mark Messier era. Crosby would have been the guy from day one, playing under the bright lights at Madison Square Garden. Add Jaromir Jagr, who scored 123 points in 2005-06, and you've got fireworks. Crosby and Jagr on the same power play. Unstoppable. Henrik Lundqvist was just emerging as a franchise goalie. With Crosby leading the offense, the Rangers could have become Cup contenders immediately. And from a league marketing perspective, this is the NHL's dream scenario. Sid in the biggest media market, more nationally televised games, higher merchandise sales, and instant ratings boost. But here's the question. Does Crosby thrive in that spotlight, or does the pressure of MSG weigh him down? Either way, the Rangers likely never enter their late 2010s rebuild. Instead, they reload year after year around Sid, and maybe even win it all before they reach the finals in 2014. Now let's talk about what this all means for Pittsburgh. No Crosby means no 2009, 2016, or 2017 Stanley Cups. Maybe no Mario Lemieux-led ownership comeback. Maybe no stability at all. Do the Penguins relocate without Sid saving the franchise? It was being talked about. Kansas City was calling. Evgeny Malkin probably still arrives, but without Crosby, maybe he becomes the guy too early or asks out. Marc-Andre Fleury, still a star, but not part of a cup-winning trio. The Penguins' modern identity? Gone. And the NHL's landscape? Massively altered. Crosby brought rivalries to life, gave the league a clean face post-lockout, and helped build a generation of fans. Without him in Pittsburgh, does Alex Ovechkin dominate the East for a decade unchecked? Do the Capitals win earlier? Does Chicago or Los Angeles become the lone dynasty of the 2010s? The butterfly effect here is enormous. Sidney Crosby didn't just change the Pittsburgh Penguins, he changed the entire NHL. But in another universe, he could have been the heart of a California powerhouse, a Southern dynasty in Carolina, the savior of a struggling Columbus team, or the biggest star on the biggest stage in New York. One ping pong ball decided everything, and that's what makes it the greatest what if in NHL history. Let us know down in the comments, which alternate timeline would you want to see? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more insane NHL what if videos. Because this sport, it's one twist away from a completely different story.